getting ready to go live here, John. And just have to wait for the picture to show up and we can get into our topic here. All right. All right, so we are live, John, and we're talking tonight about weight loss resistance and genetics. And again, when you and I when we created this course, we were talking about the missing link to a chronic problem, and people have when they're not losing weight, they're not healthy. And that may not be the number one problem in terms of I'm going to go and look into my genetics because typically I'm going to try a lot of different things. But when you're not healthy and your metabolism isn't running at high efficiencies, there's a genetic component to that, and it results in you not being able to lose weight. So that's why we wanted to talk about that today. And so, John, why don't you get us started with basically how you approach this when we talk about the genetic component being the roadmaps to see where energy production may be breaking down, and the people that come to see us are people that are exhausted and burnt out, but there is this weight loss component where at the end of it, a lot of people will feel better when they are able to lose the weight. They'll feel more motivated, they'll have more energy. But that weight has to come off first. So how do you approach it with the genetics being the roadmap, and really design a program around that so that you can give that person an overall experience of weight loss and energy?
Right. Yeah. Because weight and the inability to lose weight is a priority, from a standpoint, because it's kind of that look in the mirror standpoint. There's that superficial aspect. And so, we can be fatigued, we can have, a laundry list of symptoms, but metabolism is something that, was really a driving factor. And if there's things that we're doing from a dietary side of things or exercise side of things, and that scale's not budging or the clothes aren't changing, frustration sets in, and then kind of the space between the ears, starts kind of talking back at us. And it's like, well, we kind of lose hope. And we always think from a weight standpoint, okay, is there a hormonal component? Is it strictly a diet and exercise component? From a dietary side, should somebody do ketogenic? Should they do something like a Weight Watchers program, count calories? There's so many different variations. And when people really kind of get stuck, from a weight standpoint, really what it comes down to, with patients I work with, is they lose weight when you start addressing all the other things, but sometimes it's that last maybe 15 pounds, or everything else is improving, energy's improving, skin's improving, migraines are going away, but the scale isn't budging. There's genetic factors that can give a whole lot of insight for that person specifically on maybe what they have to change up from not only maybe a support standpoint, but from a dietary lifestyle side of things. And, one thing we're going to touch on in MTHFR crash course are some of the deal breakers that deal with nutrient absorption and utilization for energy, which then also fuels metabolism. But then there's also genetic components that can give you insight into what type of diet you should follow. Okay. So I want to kind of talk about this in kind of like really two mindsets. The mindset in terms of how our biochemistry works and some of the genetic factors that are there that can play into the inability to lose weight. But then the second part of that is, what are some of the genetic components that can determine what type of dietary lifestyle that maybe you fit into? And there's some really, really cool genes that are in the research that can give you insight into maybe what you should be doing, and maybe take some of the guesswork out, because now we are changing our lifestyle based on our genetic predisposition. And when sometimes we have that information and we make those changes, that's where we start seeing the scale move and the clothes start fitting a little bit looser and things trend in the right direction. So that's kind of my mindset. I want to kind of cover this in two spots. If you have questions, let me know. If not, I'll kind of get right into it, Joel.
Awesome. Okay, great intro, John, because that exactly is what it's about. And a couple things I would just say as well and just build on is the fact that when we say metabolism, we kind of all get it. You know, when we're younger, you always had that friend who had the quick metabolism, right? Who may have been really well defined and was able to lift weights, and or someone who can eat not the best foods and they still maintain somewhat of a shape. You kind of get the idea of I have a quick metabolism or I have a slow metabolism. And so that concept really fits when now you think of it from a cellular level. Like metabolism is meant by how you produce energy, how the factory works, and how your body basically balances the demands for creating energy. And that means having good minerals. So when John is talking about having the last few inches, the stubborn weight that as a result of getting healthy, you're actually going to start to drop weight because your body is producing energy effectively now. And then the next aspect of it is once you do that, now you can start to look at the gene component where these enzymes that are responsible for now metabolic weight loss and having those extra energies be utilized for fuel. It's like you have this dry wood that you can burn in wet wood, and that wet wood needs to now get dry to be able to figure out how to use that. And that's the extra fuel that you have in stored metabolism of fat. That's kind of what we're talking about. So again, like John said, the MTHFR course is to get you there. And maybe a lot of you, like you said, are people that they want that right away, but realize you got to get healthy. And we want what the chief complaint or the chief what's not working is to be addressed. But at the same time, you have to work your way from the genetic component up to the genes that could be responsible for the last little bit of weight loss. And so anyways, why don't you get right into it, John, and tell us what those couple of genes are and why it's so important and why they won't be able to lose weight if they don't know these things.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start out about, a couple of the genetic components that deal with metabolism and how we use food and nutrient component that can really be factors that can hinder weight loss. We've already talked about, in previous things, deal breaker genes, the ACAT gene that people have been listening to the last couple of weeks is a big player. It deals with acetylation. Basically, it's the process of the body taking certain nutrients like fats and proteins and being able to burn it as a fuel source. And if you cannot do that, your metabolism is not going to speed up. Okay. You're going to go in kind of this store mode because now you're not using those nutrient sources for fuel. Now, to kind of add on to that, there's a couple other genetic components that play in acetylation. And one thing that I see from a genetic standpoint is there's genes and there's specific genes that deal with carnitine transport. Okay. And there's a certain solute transport carrier gene that carries carnitine from, or basically what it does, it's responsible for allowing carnitine to transport into our cells. And what carnitine does is carnitine is needed to take fatty acids into our mitochondria to help fuel the body. Okay. Some people that have issues with weight loss have a slowed ability to transport carnitine. And I really make the connection with a lot of patients with this, that how important carnitine is for weight loss, because if you're going to look at supplements that are geared for weight loss, most of those supplements that are formulated contain carnitine. So carnitine is pretty important for metabolism. And some people from a genetic standpoint go into it that they may have a weakness in how they can transport carnitine. So maybe there's some things you got to do a little bit different, or maybe you got to really kind of oversaturate in terms of dosage, the amount of carnitine somebody's taking to really allow those fatty acids to get into our mitochondria to kind of fuel the system so our metabolism speeds up. So there are things from a biochemical standpoint that people do have that are genetically altered that could be huge blocks or huge barricades that they're trying every diet. They're busting their rear in the gym doing cardio or it may be, and just they're not seeing the results, but there could be a foundational ingredient missing. And I always use the example, Joel, and I don't know if we've said it here before, about it's like baking a cake. Okay. And if that cake we're trying to bake is lose weight, and you need all these ingredients put into that mix right so the cake turns out perfect, But let's say the cake is weight loss and we forget to put the carnitine in, and you throw that cake into the oven, the cake's not going to turn out very right. Okay. So you need the proper mix of certain nutrients and cofactors so that the body can fuel itself and metabolism can let go and speed up. And there's certain nutrients and how the body is able to use fats and proteins, but things like carnitine transport is something I see pretty frequently, that people have these genetic alterations that could be a missing piece of this. So that's kind of the biochemistry side. There's more genes. There's a whole lot more genes that go into this. And like, we could literally spend hours upon hours breaking this stuff down. And in our crash course, we're going to kind of talk about the key components with this. So somebody can look at a genetic report and say like, holy cow, I have, this gene and this gene and this gene that are altered. Now they can go in and kind of plug the things that they need to do based on that genetic predisposition and be able to fuel the metabolism. But what I want to do now is kind of talk about some of the genes that maybe people aren't aware of that are out there, and some things that we really haven't talked about at all from a standpoint. Okay. And these are kind of more sometimes like the fun genes, because it's like you look at this and it's like, okay, I can kind of change lifestyle up, and it really can kind of be enlightening. But there's a handful of genes that kind of deal with the lifestyle component of what we choose from a dietary side of things. Okay. And I want to kind of go through those components. And unfortunately, it's not going to give somebody the answer, because you got to run genetics. You got to run a more extensive genetic panel to figure out if you have mutations in these. And if you do, it may steer you down the right direction. So first gene is something maybe somebody's familiar with, the COMT gene. Okay. We maybe talked about CMT. Maybe people have read about CMT. It is a very sexy gene that's out there. It deals with dopamine regulation. But there's research that shows that people have that CMT genetic variants. Yes, they're going to have problems with dopamine, but then what's going to happen is a byproduct that comes with diet. They may have a tendency to be overeaters or have strong food addictions. Okay. So, and then from a symptom standpoint, everybody may get wrapped around like depression, anxiety aspects because of COMT, but there could be the weight component because of the COMT gene variant, where they're overeating. They've kind of had this addiction. They've kind of, started developing from a food side of things. So that's one thing that, to kind of look at that COMT a little bit differently. But here's some really cool genes that I like. Okay. There's a gene that we know that shows in the medical research where, and I know, Joel, you've seen this, and I know a lot of people have kind of gone through this, where you go on a weight loss program, you lose weight, but the minute you stop that protocol, you gain that weight back very quickly. Okay. There's specific genes. There's a gene called the KCTD gene. And basically when that gene's altered in people, they have a higher likelihood that when they stress the metabolism through diet, and they get away from whatever they're doing to kind of stress metabolism, whether it be caloric restriction, ketogenic, and then they stop that trend, their body goes into massive shock and just puts weight back on very rapidly. Okay. And so if somebody has that genes, they really, to get ahead of this, they can't get into kind of like a try this, try that scenario. They got to kind of have a mindset where it's kind of like a set and forget it. This is the dietary component I got to do, because if they get into a lot of shifts or yo-yo components or trying to stress the system, saying, I've got to lose 10 pounds before bikini season or before I'm hopping on a cruise, and they stress the system, the minute that they get away from stressing the system, they're going to gain that weight back, and usually more. Okay. Now,
and also too, John, too, with them is also about teaching them in the MTHFR course, which is the way that's going to benefit them the most based on their roadmaps, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
So once you get those people understanding, hey, these genes that you have the susceptibilities for and plus the way we are going to tie in how food is connected to that, and the idea of having these other genes that don't allow you the privilege to go from one dietary protocol to another, that's kind of the catch-22. The reason you're not losing the weight is because you are going from diet to diet. Not that you can't find the right one, but you're going from diet to diet. The right one is staying on the right one.
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully that made sense. So as far as John, yeah, what were you going to say on that? I stole your next line there.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Because even to piggyback on that, it's like, okay, then what diet do people choose? Because that's the question. It's like, okay, if I have this KCTD gene where it's like I really can't, try a diet or shift in and out of things or kind of stress the system because I may have a genetic predisposition of gaining weight back very rapidly. then what do you do? And so I get asked that all the time. You know, people come in from a genetic standpoint, they get chronic issues. And then a lot of times the other question is like, is there anything in my genetics that kind of tells me what I should be eating? You know, yes, my mindset initially is on some of the bigger fish. Like, should somebody eat a low histamine diet? Should somebody reduce sulfur? What are those components that are driving inflammation more than anything else? But the thing is there's genes that indicate, maybe when we're talking about macromolecules in terms of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, there's genetic components that people can have altered that really can drive us into, hey, we need to follow a certain dietary guideline. So there's a couple genes. There's the APOA2 gene, the FTO gene, and the ADIPO-Q gene. Those are all genetic components that if people have genetic variations in that, they need to probably avoid a high-fat diet. You know, and the big craze right now is ketogenic, and it's a whole lot of benefits of ketogenic diets. But I have a lot of people that come into me that are doing ketogenic diets and not losing any weight, and wondering why all their friends are doing ketogenic, they're losing weight and their clothes are changing, but that person, the scale is not budging. Well, maybe they have those genetic variants where, based on their genetic predisposition, a high-fat diet is not the way to go for them. Okay. And that's invaluable information, because that kind of says, hey, that's something I can't do. It's not working, number one, but this is why it's not working, because of my genetics is telling me that it's not the right way to go for me. Other components. Yeah.
John, too, just sorry to interrupt. So one of the things that we forgot to mention, which we just kind of take for granted because we mentioned it the very first time, as a bonus, the thing that I'm recommending or that I have in the bonus at the end is the ability to data track that. So you do have the ability, when you have a keto meter and you're looking at your glucose and you're looking at your ketones, which I think are important. And one of the things that I stress with the people I work with, John, is you don't have to be ketogenic full on. You have to be metabolically flexible to be able to drive energy production with L-carnitine and acetylation and everything that's required of that. But you also should be able to utilize protein and glucose, but not only glucose. But either way, let's say what John's saying is you have these genetic predispositions to not be a good fat burner because it's just not energetically efficient to do it that way. But you can still become more metabolically aware and more metabolically flexible when you data track and you know the genetic component. And so what the bonus that's included, which is over 5K worth of bonuses, is really the fact that we customize a program for you so that it's based on genetic components. It's based on understanding how to do glucose. And those are free little videos that I will create. I already have the ability for you guys to be able to go in there and use that as a platform for us to set that up for you. But the video component where we explain how to set it up will make it so much easier. So that's a bonus, John. So, and I know we may talk about one more bonus, but time's getting close to being, deadline. It starts next Tuesday, and Monday night, which is already the 1st. Can you believe it, John? We're not playing an April Fool's joke on you. It's real. It's going to be the deadline, and the April Fools will be you. So make sure you sign up before that. But anyways, John, so tell us, is it one more gene that you have?
Yeah, so on the opposite side of that, so there's genes that say that people maybe should avoid a high fat-based diet. There's genes, MMAB genes and KCDTD genes that indicate that people need to maybe avoid carbohydrates. Okay, so maybe a ketogenic diet is the way to go for them. And that's maybe if somebody has some of those genetic variants where they have to restrict the carbohydrates, they shift to ketogenic diet. And maybe those are the people that just completely flourish with it. The weight drops off. They feel better than they have any time in their lifetime. There's maybe a likelihood that they have some of those genetic variants where they need to avoid carbohydrates. I have other patients that they need the carbohydrates and they actually do better in terms of metabolism when they consume a higher carbohydrate diet. And so we always kind of say, like, what's the rhyme or the reason why certain dietary protocols work with one person and don't work with the next. Well, our biochemistry, our genetic predisposition plays into that. And because of the research that's come out, we can look at this stuff and save people a lot of the headache and a lot of the wasted time and resources and say, hey, based on your genetics, maybe we should put the shift here and follow this for a period of time. And, hey, things are moving in the right direction. So one thing we're doing with our MTHFR crash course is I have templates in certain resources that and analyzes genetic aspects more than just the couple of genes we talked about. LiveWell is an interpretation platform. I have customized genes or customized reports in there that deal with weight loss and metabolism that I use with my patients privately. But what we're going to do in this MTHFR crash course is if somebody has their genetics or when they get genetics done, we're going to be able to take their raw data and give them a report that looks at 50 plus genes that deal with metabolism and then tell them, hey, based on this is what you should be doing. Okay. This is the dietary aspect that you should be following going forward if one of your biggest concerns is weight loss, or after we address maybe other things or you've addressed other things through this and you can't lose that last 15, then you come back to something like this, and more often than not, it starts pushing things in the right direction again.
Right. And then on top of that, John, which, you forgot to mention, which is the bonus of the fact that once you do look at those genes, you have a software, do you not, that you can give them a shopping list where, hey, you have a better, because basically the genes give you the idea of where to tighten the boundaries around, right? So that you don't have such wide boundaries, that you have more room for error. So tighten up the ship, and where your genes show you have a better propensity for this area or a better probability for that. And and also with histamines and sulfurs and all that other stuff. And then be able to print out, how does that even work? It's so cool.
So what we do is we're going to teach people from a standpoint of like, okay, understanding histamine issues or some of those things from a inflammatory aspect in foods they got to watch out, whether it be histamine or oxalates or, like you said, sulfur based components. But then also, all right, teach people to understand that, okay, based on metabolism based genes, you maybe need to do a ketogenic diet. Maybe you've never done it before, or maybe you need to do a diet where you have to avoid fats. And so then there's dietary protocols that we have. And I've got this really great template, which is kind of similar to like MyFitnessPal, but the difference of that is it gives you a dietary plan. So it has a capability to track foods and things of that nature, kind of like your hacking software. But what's great about this is I can set somebody up for a higher carbohydrate, low fat, anti-inflammatory dietary protocol. And basically what's going to do as a bonus of our MTHFR support crash course is they're going to get free 30-day access to that. So it's basically going to give them a 30-day dietary plan that's going to give them recipes, shopping list, and basically hold their hand if they need that for a significant dietary shift based on the information that they learn and are able to extract from their genetic reports after going through our MTHFR crash course. Because we want people to learn from this, to be able to take this information and learn from us over 6 weeks and be able to extrapolate this and say, oh, wow, I have those genes. This is what homozygous means. I need to restrict fats. And then from there, we plug them in, give them a 30-day trial to that. And then that way it starts changing the lifestyle pattern so that they can have, guidelines then going forward thereafter to really impact and change the quality of their life. And that's what this whole course is about, is to give people the tools and the resources to take their health back in their own hands to be able to change quality and function.
Yeah, I mean, awesome. It's actually makes me excited to hear how the bonuses come to life in 3 dimensions when you talk about it like that. But the other thing too, just the last thing is, John, I think I forgot what I was gonna say. I totally forgot. But it was gonna be a good one. But as far as that goes, John, this is what it was. So when you were talking about the hey, these are the different kind of genes that you got to be looking for. What I've found that's really helpful, that I know John and I have talked about being really important in the creation of this course too, is the PDFs, right? In terms of really simplifying the process, because it can be overwhelming. Like, that's why I said, hey, John, let's do this in more of a casual way, because this content is really deep. But how can we make it so we give you enough information that it's not too overwhelming, but we also give you information that it's very easy to apply? And the PDFs that accompanied the important lessons, that the takeaways, that, like John says, the deal breakers, that if this deal breaker is that sort of the quick cheat sheet. And so anyways, to me, John, this has been our best Facebook Live by far. I mean, I think in terms of kind of understanding for those that it's kind of confusing, right? Like, is the MTHFR for me? And I would say that talking about the weight loss component of it is a real deal breaker for people, right? They're not losing weight. But also the deal breaker is the vicious cycle that goes in both directions. When you're not healthy and you're exhausted and you can't drop the weight, makes it even a double whammy, and vice versa. When you're not dropping the weight, you don't feel like going out, like John said, and it becomes a vicious cycle in both directions. So it's not only for those that are not able to lose weight, it's those that would potentially have I guess the same thing can be said, John, for those. It's not so much that they're not losing weight, but they're catabolic, right? And they can't put on weight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of like how, with this MTHFR crash course, it's kind of like, with the bonuses we talked about that we're doing to give people the resources and PDF like cheat sheets that, really help organize this data. It's really kind of a thing where, it's a 6-week course, and it's like in 2-3 week blocks. And the first 3 weeks is basically to give you an MTHFR crash course, to give you an understanding of baseline genetics, so you can have a better understanding of terminology, how to look at reports, how to interpret reports, what are the key genes that you really may need to put your focus on initially. And they're the same genes that I put focus on with patients I work with every day. And then the second half of that course, basically we're getting into like the meat of it, is saying, and things like weight loss. It's like whatever your health concerns are, if it's fatigue, we are going to have specific, tools and teachings for these are the things that deal with fatigue. And so if you have chronic fatigue, these are the genes you should look at, and this is what you do about it. We're going to have a track on weight loss, some of the genes we talked about, this evening, plus a couple more. We're going to talk about thyroid health. What are some of the key genes that deal with thyroid that kind of plays back into even fatigue and energy aspects. We're going to do a short track on things like fertility, so we're going to kind of talk about some other kind of key components that if somebody's really suffering with a specific thing that is just bogging them down every single day. Yes, we're going to teach them about genetics. Okay. But really what people want to get out of it is, how do I feel better? How do I address the things that are affecting me day in, day out? So you got to have a little bit of a foundation to understand how this genetic piece ties into those symptoms. So the first 3 weeks, we're going to teach you that. And then from there, we're going to teach you, okay, now you've got these symptoms. You got a little bit of information to be a little dangerous on this genetic stuff. Now let's apply that to what's ailing you day in, day out to get you feeling better. And now you're able to do that on your own and take back control of your health.
What a cool course, man. Who else is doing? I don't think there's anyone else out there that's really combining like the thing that's great about it, John, is that I think that the actual field, I always call them the marching orders. The only way you have feedback on marching orders is by knowing the genetic component, implementing it, and then making tweaks along the way, because the mechanics and the blueprint of all. And so from that idea and standpoint, having the practical experience is awesome, but then there's no one else really doing the component of the genetics at the level of implementing it with all the tools. And I'm giving ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back. It's a pretty cool course, I think more people should sign up for it and realize that it really gives you a roadmap on not just weight loss, but weight loss on optimal health. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. And so I think this was a great one, John. Maybe we do one, I think, talking about, we haven't touched upon, which is a huge part of this, is the cognitive or the brain and the mood and the anxiety and the overwhelm and the altered up and down and the sadness and all the things that accompany that. And so we can do that maybe tomorrow if you're available. If not, we can look to do it Friday or Saturday. Let me know what works for you.
Yeah, I'll let you know. My son's got his school drama play tomorrow at 6 o'clock, but we can maybe plan on 9 o'clock tomorrow. And if we can't do it then, we'll I'll check with my boss and ask her if tomorrow night will work. If not, we'll do something Friday. And
what about the first intermission? Walk out,
walk out, do Facebook Live. It's a fifth grade play. It's an hour long, regardless. There's no intermission. It's not like that. But yeah, I think the neurotransmitter component that deals with anxiety and depression and mood components is huge because along with the weight, some of the biggest complaints people have are I'm tired, I'm depressed, and I can't lose weight. Okay. Yeah. And the thing is there's genetic components of this. And in my experience, the mood aspect from a genetic standpoint, when those things are genetically altered, those are things that people can get under control pretty darn quickly. And I see it all the time. So that is something I definitely think we should touch on and kind of give people a little bit of an understanding of some of the baselines and then how we're going to really expand in that into the MTHFR course, because we're going to talk about the genetic components with that, but then we're going to teach people, hey, if you have depression or anxiety, insomnia issues, this is what you do if you have those genetic components. So yeah, let's do something like that tomorrow night. And then, get people geared up for this starting next Tuesday and go from there.
Yeah, and the deadline is on Monday night, but go do it right now. So it's easy. Just MTHFR crash course .com, MTHFR crash course, and then at the very bottom there, you'll see those really cool 5 bonuses and the updated bonus of I think it's kind of in there, right, John, with being able to give them a report on their own genetics, but we'll kind of have a little slash the weight loss genes too.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Good Facebook Live, and you'll text me, let me know what time works, and then I will be able to let everyone who's watching this know what time tomorrow will be.
All right, sounds great. Everybody have a good night.
Man, thanks. Yep, good talking.
Bye.
Bye.